Chairman, and thank you to both the witnesses. A lot of the areas I want to discuss have already been raised, so if I'm repeating myself, please just let me know. Minister Bruton, in relation to regulation in your opening statement, on page 4, you talk about a new structure for the financial regulator introduced in 2002. Is it true to say that you didn't feel it was a good structure for regulation and for overseeing the financial sector in Ireland?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I think the biggest objection I had was that we hadn't stress tested the actual powers, the capabilities, the method of overseeing the financial institutions. There was a bigger debate about whether it should be, the regulator should be independent, stand alone, or be part of the central bank. And that dominated, if you like, that institutional debate dominated the conversation, where I thought, personally, that the more important thing was, were they fit for purpose? Were they capable of overseeing the sort of financial problems that were already evident? But again, we would have favoured a standalone regulator, an independent regulator. But I think that was less central than the issue of their capabilities and were they robust.
So you had concerns about the model and you had concerns about the capabilities. So why did you trust their work?
Well, I had a lot. I mean, the period after that was a sustained issue of period of calling into question as to whether they were up to scratch, and we saw a period when, a number of practices were revealed of overcharging and so on in the banks, and it always appeared to me that the regulatory system arrived breathless and late, as they say, and they responded to whistleblowers or some revelation in the press that led to the issue. So that continued to leave a question mark as to whether the system was sufficiently forensic to do the job.
Okay. When it comes to the 2007 election manifesto, I can't find anything in it relating to prudential regulation, the need to improve our prudential regulation of the banks, or really anything about the banking sector at all in terms of substance. So why not, if you had these concerns from 2002?
Yeah, it's a valid point. I suppose we didn't have a detailed, if you like, alternative scrutiny mechanism for overseeing banks, and our policy at the time in 2002 was we needed a robust evaluation of how fit for purpose it was. So that was a question of doing a detailed assessment. It wasn't a sort of a policy change. Personally, I'm not sure that the structures were at the source of the problem. It was the lack of forensic investigation, the rather cosy relationships that were there, and so on. Those were the weaknesses.
So what was, Fine Gael's reaction then to Northern Rock? Again, the concerns are there. Northern Rock happens, there's queues in the streets in Dublin. Did you approach the financial regulator or central bank directly?
Well, I obviously took the issue up immediately with the Minister for Finance, and I questioned the Minister for Finance, and I have it there somewhere, in detail about whether, a failure of a bank, were we in a position to deal with that? How confident was he that there were no such vulnerabilities in our system? Had we the proper powers and capabilities in place? So those questions were asked, and they were indeed also asked of the central bank and the regulator. The assurances were given that they were.
But there was no way, for the Oireachtas to directly scrutinise their work or hold them to account?
No, obviously we didn't have access to the financial institutions, and I think, as Senator Susan O'Keefe says, we probably didn't have the forensic, well, perhaps Deputy O'Donnell did, but we didn't generally have the forensic capabilities of investigating, even if we had them. We didn't have them.
Taoiseach, did Gael know about the dangers to the economy going into the 2007 election? Did it see the risks ahead in terms of the banking sector or the property sector?
Yeah, if you look back at the statements from 2002 onwards, all of the budgetary statements and the major economic statements that were made, Deputy Bruton, as he was then, pointed out consistently of the bubble that was forming around the housing, property and construction sector, and he had consistently questioned Minister Cowan in respect of bank lending, the stress testing that should be carried out here. But let me go back to the dangers that we were pointing out consistently of benchmarking, of social partnership, of overruns, of inefficiency, of a situation where you were not getting the value for money, and that people, actually needed to spend what they were spending. I pointed that out consistently.
I don't mean to cut you short, so I'm short on time myself. I'm talking though about 2007 and the opposition and Fine Gael as the main opposition party going to the people. Did it raise, did it actively decide not to raise the dangers of the economy or the potential risks that were coming down the line as part of that message to the people that goes on in the campaign?
Well, we did actively point out that we were heading in the wrong direction, and that we needed to get back to a point where you were lean and competitive, where you were export oriented, but you were never going to be able to deal with the social consequences of continuing to have public spending increasing at the rate that it was, of borrowing to continue to do that, and therefore putting your vulnerable elements of your society in really serious difficulty. So our thread right through from 1997 was you had a functioning economy, competent management of that economy, and therefore the opportunity to spread the fruits of that economy to where they were needed most with vulnerable people. And in opposition, it continued for a while until the focus became on the property sector in particular. So in 03, 04, 05, 06, and as we prepared for 07, Fine Gael had consistently pointed out the dangers of where we were.
Okay, we have the liquidity problems in the banks then coming to light in 07, and we come then into September 2008. And looking at the Dáil records immediately after the night of the guarantee, we see Michael Noonan in the Dáil questioning the solvency, the potential risk to solvency of the banks. Why didn't Fine Gael as a party put that position forward? And why did Fine Gael come to support the decision, the guarantee? Did you consult with Labour, and what did you make of their decision not to support the guarantee?
Well, as I said, when the question of the guarantee came to me, first of all in the morning, my response was you needed a functioning banking system as the lifeblood of the economy, and the guarantee that was being put up by the government at the time, we needed to know the conditions of that. Obviously, Fine Gael took a view here that we would support the banking guarantee for that reason, that the economy and business and trade is where you need to be. And obviously the issue was argued in the Dáil. I remember the question that Deputy Noonan asked in respect of liquidity or solvency. We supported the business, though, that we'd be able that banks would be able to open the following morning. That there were 3 substantial buffers totaling 80 billion that would be called upon before there would be any exposure to the taxpayer. That was shareholders' funds, ECB funds, and a future levy on the banks, similar to the insurance levy, which in the words of the Taoiseach in the Dáil said would pay for the difference through a levy over time rather than expecting the taxpayer to do so. Obviously the situation has changed now following the discussions with Europe. And secondly, that the government would return within 3 days with details of the new regulatory scheme that would govern the banks in the post-guarantee world. We also sought, from our point of view, through Mr. Bruton, amendments and assurances in relation to that the regulatory system would be improved substantially, that there would be more detail on the powers granted to the Minister under the Act and how we plan to use them to create an improved regulatory situation, that the guarantee would cover deposits and bonds and not other obligations that were introduced into the Dáil debate, that there would be restrictions on payment of dividends and on bonuses, that there would be improved oversight with 3 people appointed, nominated by the Public Accounts Committee, that there would be representation by the government on the boards of the banks covered by the guarantee, that there would be codes of practice for risk committees, and there would be importance of continuing to keep credit flowing into the economy. So there were the reasons we took the view that you needed a banking system that functioned, therefore you needed to...
Wrap up, Deputy, because you're over time.
Thank you, Chair. Just then, if you felt that was the responsive position in terms of the Oireachtas, in terms of opposition, what did you view then of Labour's position not to support the guarantee?
Well, obviously, the Labour Party were perfectly entitled to make their view as a political party on where they stood on it. I think Labour wanted to see, all of the details before they would make a decision on the guarantee, and obviously Fine Gael took a view that this was a real emergency here, that you were in a really difficult position, that you needed a functioning banking guarantee system and banks to be open the following morning. I mean, I said this publicly before. Very shortly after the election, of which my own government was elected, we were told that you were very close to the edge of that precipice. That it might be akin to what you've seen in Greece recently. in terms of liquidity and capacity for people to draw money from banks and do business. So we took the view, there's a real emergency here. These are the things that we look for. There were elements of the guarantee, the buffers that were in there, as I've said, the return of the Minister within 3 days with new regulatory powers and all the rest of it. But Fine Gael took a view as a political party, what are you going to do here? This is a really serious situation. So we supported the guarantee. Obviously, the Labour Party were quite entitled to do so.
But were those views taken? I mean, did you support the guarantee with those views taken on board by the government, or regardless of whether they were taken on board or not?
No, we wanted these things put in place that would give far greater scrutiny, far greater authority to the Minister for Finance. Those details would be important from our point of view. But the immediate crisis was that there was an 80 billion free buffer zone here, and that the government would come back within 3 days of the details of the new regulatory regime to be outlined in the House by the Minister for Finance.